fortunate one. Paradise must be won. Paradise must be won. Each day and each night, through darkness and through light, cry it out to the world. Spread the word. Spread the word of Islam.
Modernism has no place in Islam. There are no versions of Islam. We don't have moderate Muslims, extremist Muslims, Friday Muslims. We really don't have them. We just have Muslims. Modernism is a trend which challenges Islam right now and Muslims.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go into the question and answer session now. A few rules, inshallah, to make sure this runs effectively. When you come to the microphone, which are placed one in here in the front for the brothers, a second in the rear for the brothers, one in the front middle of the sister section. When you approach the microphone, please do so in a neat and orderly manner. Form one queue at the microphone. Do not bunch up around the microphone and listen to any instructions given to you by the microphone attendant. You may ask one question and one question only. Your question should be on this topic, modernism and Islam. If you have a second question, you will need to go to the rear of the line before answering that second question. If you write down your question, the question will have a second priority. It is better that you get to the microphone or have someone else go to the microphone for you to ask that question. Non-Muslims who are with us this evening, I'm not going to call you out, but I want you to know that this forum, inshallah, is an excellent opportunity for you to give us some feedback and to clarify any misconceptions you have on any subject in Islam. We make a priority for you at the microphones, so if there are any non-Muslims here in the audience tonight, contact any volunteer that you see in the aisles, and they will assist you in getting to the front of the line to ask your questions. Your questions need not be limited to this topic, but I ask that they do be brief. And if you simply want to make a comment or a criticism, you may also do that. Do not fear anyone's anger for something that you might say. You are welcome in this audience to say anything that you need to say, but I ask you to please keep it brief. With no further ado, inshallah, keeping this very short, I now bring Dr. Bilal Phillips back to the microphone, inshallah, for question and answers. The gentleman in the front will begin with a question from you. We'll then go to the rear mic, and I believe we'll be taking 2 questions at a time from the sister section. Brother, could you please state your name and occupation?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Gundu Muhammad Amin. I am a businessman. My question is, in modern Islam, people are accepting women as the leader. My question to Mr. Philip is whether he approve lady as our ruler from the Islamic point of view.
The question is, what is your opinion in Islam on Muslim women as rulers?
Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a hadith found in Sahih al-Bukhari, when it was mentioned to him that a woman had become the queen of Persia, become the ruler of Persia, he said, a people who choose as their leader a woman will not succeed. So the position held in Islam is that ultimate leadership. It doesn't mean a woman can't be the head of a school, head of a hospital, other institutions, but as the head of state, the ultimate leader of the country, Islam recommends that that position be held by a man. That is the strong recommendation. The Prophet ﷺ did not forbid it. He did not forbid that a woman lead. He didn't forbid it, but he advised against it, that it would lead to the failure of the society. And it does represent impotence on the part of the society. And that is why places like the US, which is one of the strongest nations, they have no female presidents. All of the presidents since its beginning, they had none. Britain had none until more recently, as it became weaker, lost its power. Then you saw female rulers appearing more often. Similarly, France and the other big countries of the West, it is not a common phenomenon.
Thank you for your question, inshallah. We'll take a question from the rear section. Brother's mic, inshallah. Could you please state your name and occupation?
Assalamu alaikum. This is Salahuddin Ayubi, and I'm a software engineer by profession. My question is with regard to ijtihad. There are some scholars who say that ijtihad leads to modernism or bid'ah and innovation. And there are some others who say that if you consider the sunnah, it is agreed upon that ijtihad is permitted in Islam. So what's your position with regard to ijtihad in Islamic sense? And I just want to add with regard...
No, don't add. Let me just answer your question.
Okay.
With regards to ijtihad, modernists may use the call to ijtihad as a door for them to change the religion. Ijtihad meaning making new rulings for new circumstances, right? Islam in general left the door for ijtihad open, but that is ijtihad of the scholars, not any person, any lay person, anybody who without scholarship making ijtihad. Not in terms of the rules of Islam, making judgments, making laws. No, that is left to scholars. Those who closed the door of ijtihad did so in ignorance, and that led to stagnation. Historically, it is well known. From the 13th century, with the fall of Baghdad, door for ijtihad was closed by the scholars of that time. So the basic position is that the door of ijtihad is open for the scholars, not for people without qualification. It's like the door for brain operations. It's open for every brain surgeon, but not for any doctor who feels like checking it out. Same basic principle. On to the sisters.
Yeah, thank you for the question, inshallah. Sisters, do you have a question? Could you please state your name and occupation and briefly state your question?
I'm Yasmin Zulekha. I'm a doctor. It's some small knowledge which I have in Surah Nisa. Quran says about whom you're supposed to marry, whom you're not supposed to marry. And science talks bad on consanguineous marriages. What is Islamic view on this?
This is a question related because it is a scientific challenge to Islam which calls for a reassessment. Which what they're basically talking about is marrying cousins, right? That it is commonly said that frequent marriage of cousins leads to defects, birth defects, and these kinds of things, right? Where children are born with cleft lips and a variety of different birth defects as a result of continual marriage of cousins. But reality is that marriage of cousins in and of itself has not been proven scientifically to cause this. Medical studies have not established this. This is an assumption which has been made in the medical profession. It's become well known, commonly circulated, but it has not been established scientifically. It is, you could say, an opinion held which had become commonly accepted. But fact of the matter, from my readings, this has not been scientifically established. But in any case, even if it is, we're talking about continual marriages, especially in societies like in where you have certain segments of the society, like amongst the ruling families in Europe, where everybody married amongst themselves, and it was a very small and limited group, that you started to see these kinds of birth defects appearing, or it was said to be caused by this. In any case, Islam does not teach a preference for marrying cousins. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam married 12 women. Only one out of the 12 was a cousin. Only one out of the 12 was a cousin. So Islam does not recommend marriage to cousins. It permits it. The example of the Prophet ﷺ is to marry outside of the group, outside of the family, within other families, from other societies. Sophia was from a Jewish extraction. Maria was from an Egyptian extraction, and so on and so forth. He married women from a variety of different backgrounds outside of his family structure. And that is what Islam recommends. That is preferable.
Brother, could you please state your name and your occupation and briefly state your question?
My name is Mohammad Isaac. I am from Madras. Philip Saab, for your wonderful speech, we are very grateful to you. But you have not touched the economic section, economic aspects of modern Muslims. We are in India living in a non-Islamic state. The concept of interest, without interest, nobody is giving the money. What is the solution for it?
Okay, I did mention riba and interest, that the modernists have proposed that this is permissible. What is the solution for it? Well, the solution was started back in the 70s when the first Islamic bank was set up. When the idea of Islamic banking was floated, the Western economic and banking institutions laughed and they scoffed at it. They said, what a joke. Banking without interest. Who ever heard of that? Not realizing that interest banking was something which happened only a few hundred years before. Prior to that, people's economic dealings in Europe was without interest because it was known interest was evil. When Muslims started this, it took off. So much so that today all of your leading banks, HSBC, Citibank, Bank of London, all of your major banks around the world have branches for Islamic banking. That is the answer, the solution, the alternative. What I say here is that with nearly 200 million Muslims here in India, the fact that they do not have Islamic banks where Muslims can put their money, have it invested without interest, I will say that is an indictment of the Muslims of India. That is their failure. Their failure to establish alternatives when they have millionaires and billionaires in their midst, but they're using the money in a way which is not pleasing to Allah. They're only taking out of it for their own pleasure, their own self-aggrandizement, rather than seeing in the blessing which Allah has given them a responsibility to help the rest of the Muslim community find alternatives for Islam, for economics, Islamic alternatives for economic dealings in this country. It is their duty, and they, each and every one who is in a position to establish an Islamic alternative and does not do so, they carry the sin of the community forced to deal in interest. Not to say that each and every individual who ends up dealing in interest gets off the hook, that they are excused. No, they still have to answer to Allah. Because in the end, dealing in interest is a choice. In most cases, 99.9% of the cases, people choose to deal in interest.
Thank you for that question, inshallah. I'm still looking for some non-Muslims. Okay then, inshallah, we're coming to the back mic, inshallah. Brother, please state your name and occupation.
My name is Deepak. I work as a sales executive. My question is not related to modernization. It's like, in among Muslims, why there are difference? Tamil speaking Muslims, Hindi speaking Muslims, Malayalam speaking Muslims, and why people did, among themselves there are divisions like Rautar, Marakir, and they don't marry among, they don't marry Urdu speaking Muslims, Tamil speaking Muslims. Why is it so?
Okay, first question, why are there Muslims speaking different languages? Because Islam is a religion of the whole world. That's why you find Muslims speaking all of your major languages of the world. You have Muslims speaking Malay in Indonesia and Malaysia, Muslims speaking Filipino in Philippines, Muslims speaking Chinese, Mongolian in China, in Russia. Wherever you go in the world, you have Muslims speaking the language of the area in which they exist. Okay, so that's why we have Muslims speaking all the different languages, rather than all Muslims speaking one language. Now, there is one universal language which Muslims share, and that is Arabic. And that's why they're able to pray with each other wherever they are in the world. Arabic is the bonding language which links them so they can pray together in congregation anywhere in the world. With regards to what you perceive as communities among Muslims not marrying each other, this is from their deviation from the teachings of Islam. Islam doesn't teach that. Islam is against that. But this is their ignorance. This is their own habits which they have given precedence to, their customs over Islamic teachings. Because otherwise, Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, had said that if a person comes to ask for your daughter in marriage, and you are pleased with his religion and his character, then you should marry your daughter to him, regardless of his background. Otherwise, there will be corruption in the land. So Islam really speaks very strongly against this practice that you're speaking of. And in other communities, we don't find as much as we may find here in India. It is less. This may vary from place to place. But Islamic teachings, according to the teachings of Islam, the early generations, if you look at the history of Muslims in different parts of the world, in Spain, in India, and elsewhere, they married freely amongst each other and didn't restrict their marriages to small family groups, giving them names like Sayyids and things like this. It wasn't a practice. This is a deviation from Islamic teachings that you're observing. Okay?
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Go ahead with your question.
Is cloning halal or haram? and they would like to know with the explanation of the verses.
Cloning, where it involves human beings, cloning would be unacceptable. Where it involves human beings. Cloning in the animal kingdom and in the vegetable kingdom for the benefit of human beings is acceptable. If we clone a particular strain of rice or wheat or whatever because it is strong and it's able to withstand disease and things like this, there is no harm. This is knowledge which Allah has given us. If we do it in the animal kingdom, like cloning a cow that has been genetically modified to produce insulin in its milk. Insulin, which normally is a very difficult process to gain. It is possible to put, a gene into a cow so that the cow will, the next generation of cows will give insulin in their milk. So then such a cow you want to clone to increase the number, because in the next generation it will be lost again. You clone to produce this for the benefit of human society. This is permissible. But when it comes to the cloning of human beings, the intention behind it is evil. The intention behind it is evil. Because people in the plan to clone human beings either have the intent to produce spare parts for an existing human being. That's what you're going to do, right? You take a few cells from yourself and you produce another version of yourself. Why? So you can have spare parts. When your heart runs out, you can take a heart out, put it in, something else goes wrong, you take it out, you put it in. You're looking for spare parts. But what happens is that cloned human being is not you. Not any more than your child is you, who was formed from your sperm. It is your sperm that has produced that child, along with the ovum of your wife, but it's not you. And if we are able to clone a human being, it will not be you. You cannot say, well, this is my extra body that I can take my spare parts from. No. So the intent is evil. They're not looking to reproduce another you for any other intent than for you to be able to live, to become immortal. The same trick which Satan played on Adam. So cloning from that perspective would be considered haram.
Spread the word, oh man. Spread the word of Islam. Oh, fortunate one, paradise must be won. Paradise must be won each day and each night, through darkness and through light. Cry it out to the world. Spread the